If you haven't seen part 1 of this follow-up video, please click the annotation provided or the first link in the description box. All clips in this video have been used with the permission of their providers. After the follow-up segment of this video is concluded, there will be a special segment just for biblical apologists. No one else is allowed. Now, there have been over 700 comments on that original video that this is a follow-up to, and 12 video responses, but nobody got it right. And I'm a little bit perturbed about that. Now, apparently all of the commenters that contributed to those 700 plus comments and 12 video responses were able to listen to the stories the way they wanted to and put their own imperfect little twists on them, but they didn't get the memo or just couldn't grasp for whatever reason that the author of those stories was obviously the embodiment of perfect morality, him or herself. So if your response was anything other than recognizing all of those stories as valuable guides for a healthy moral life, then you were offensively wrong. Let's explore why, starting with story 1.
Despite sympathizing with her, I consider her actions to be immoral. Though she had the option of using or carrying pepper spray, she instead, for purposes of style, chose to carry a knife, which is a far more lethal weapon.
Wow, way to oversimplify the point of the story. This story is obviously about the value of physical fitness. You want to sit there and call this girl and therefore the author of the story immoral just because the girl in it was picky about her personal style? Way to totally miss the point. It's almost like you weren't listening with the sole intent of finding a strictly positive lesson. Don't you realize it's the subtleties of the text that are important, not the basic information that's actually being given? And take that hood off. I can't even see your face.
I don't really have a yes or no answer about this. I don't really know. I don't really want to say it's morally wrong. But it is wrong to hurt someone.
Really? You're going to focus on the part of the innocent person getting hurt too? Did anyone bother to pay attention to the verbose undertones that emphasize physical wellness here?
For the first story, I don't really think it's good or bad. The woman was acting out of defense of a perceived danger, and the fact that it turned out to be not a real danger doesn't make it bad.
Thank you! Someone who's able to look past that whole stabbing thing.
One question though, how did this guy with asthma manage to catch up to this woman who's really in shape and regularly goes to the gym?
Come on! And I thought you understood the point. It's almost like you understood that it was about the value of staying in shape, but then you go applying these questions of reader logic as if it's possible for what you consider logical to contradict what an obviously flawless author wrote. If you'd have just accepted that the author of the story was perfect to begin with, you probably wouldn't have to worry about your little question at all, because you'd know the only reason you had a question on it is because you weren't smart enough to understand the actual nuances of the story that explain away that contradiction. Let's move on to story 2.
The second story, on the surface looks really easy, clear-cut, just like, okay, that's good morality.
That's because it is good morality, obviously.
I guess it depends on how we define what is moral. Is it moral to you? Is it moral to me? Is it moral to the community or the people around us? And I guess treating the couple the way they did would kind of go against their society or the community that they were in. But at the same time, it's still sort of good, and eventually the rest of the neighbors came around to liking the newlyweds. So I'm still going to say that is good morality.
But you did overthink this one a little bit too much. It's obviously not the kind of story where you were supposed to explore subtleties and nuances. It sounds good on the surface, so the author was obviously telling a parable to inform people why they should be more open-minded and less prejudiced.
Second story, I found the story itself was particularly moral. Nothing wrong happened. Nothing at all was bad. I grew up from a very tolerant family.
That's right. Good for you. We have someone else here who was able to easily understand the perfect words of the author.
The second one, I guess it is a good morality example of why you should not be prejudiced because of the color of the skin or the ethnic background of a person.
Beautiful! One more person who was able to understand that this part of the story was obviously meant to be taken literally.
Second story, absolutely moral. It's okay, it's perfectly okay that they took the first opportunity to deal with their own shock and to make something good of it. The neighborhood opens up. I mean, this is what we always want to see.
Exactly. I'm glad you were able to see this part correctly. This should be considered evidence that these stories were written by such a divine author that everybody could understand and agree with the moral teachings therein. And you really have to look at all the stories together rather than dividing them in order to accept them in their full context. How can you say that story 3, for example, is immoral when just minutes before you were listening to story 2 where such a great thing like this happened? I don't have any respect for someone who's going to quote the events of story 3 out of context. Most of you folks really missed the point of story 3, by the way, and I bet the perfect author would be pretty upset if he had to hear your terrible misinterpretations thereof. Let's listen anyway, though, and straighten them out.
The man who eats children. Ow. I mean, seriously, is that even a question?
Wow, and I thought you had it figured out. It's unbelievable how close-minded you're being about this whole story, just because it happens to be about a man murdering and eating children on the surface. You're willing to write it off as immoral. I find that disgusting and untrustworthy of you.
Let's look at this from a consequentialist point of view, at the consequences. A lot of children dead. Bad consequence. Then let's look at it from a deistic point of view, which means let's look at his intentions. Well, I guess it's safe to assume that his intentions were bad. You talk about dark desires. Intentions, motivations, emotions that are generally not considered to be, well, pure or, in fact, okay.
Let me just stop you right there. You're rambling on, oversimplifying the point of the story. Did you not pay attention to the most important part? All I hear is you hyper-focusing and placing judgment on the literal things said in the story that you consider negative. Let's see if this next guy understood what it was supposed to be about.
I would definitely need to know more about the man who decides he likes how children taste before I judge him, which sounds absurd. Obviously, it's a terrible thing to do from my perspective, and I cannot imagine anything justifying it, but that doesn't mean that nothing exists that would.
No, you don't need to know more about the man in order to understand this story's perfect moral teaching. Why are you people so obsessed and hung up on the literal interpretations about murder and cannibalism? Fortunately for us, Proportional Response saw this video, and he made a reply that actually noticed the important part.
If there was any good moral judgment, is if you go hunting and you kill a deer, then it's good to use all the parts of the deer, and it seemed to be what he was doing. You know, he was using everything and getting rid of the evidence.
Thank you! I'm glad somebody noticed the point of the story was to be efficient. It's a very good moral lesson to take from Kevin, but apparently everyone else just wanted to focus on the negative parts and call that the moral judgment. Wait, what's that proportional response?
But I do think that, yeah, the killing of kids, of course, is completely immoral.
Damn it, what's the matter with you people? It's almost like you were looking at these stories and making your decisions as objectively as possible. Did I really need to explain to you that before you'd be able to fairly judge them, you had to listen to them, already believing that no matter what they said, the outcome would reflect that of perfect morality? I mean, if you'd just done that, then you'd all have interpreted these stories accurately. Maybe. I mean, if you read this story under that impression and thought that the point was that it was morally good to kill children, well, that would just be wrong. I mean, you wouldn't be a true story listener if you interpreted it that way.
Yeah, I don't agree on a personal level what he's doing or what he did was right.
Wow. This guy doesn't even think that being efficient is right. You either read the story the wrong way or you're anti-efficiency, sir. What is it? You know what? I'm done here. I've made my point clearly enough. Maybe when all of you people that just want to look at literature without considering its full historical context, even the parts that aren't there, and without assuming that it's a perfect moral guideline before you even read it, or think that your own sense of morality is even close to on par with that of an author you've never even met, then I don't even want to have this conversation. Get out of here. Go on. Get. Hey, biblical apologist, come here. Come here. Closer. Now that all those people who don't have the ability to read things the way that you do are gone, I just wanted to let you know that, it sounds just as stupid when you pull this shit with your Bible. Got it? Take care. Bye-bye now.
I just kind of hate, like, postulating about this and that, and then you're like, wrong in the end.
And you are a vile man if you made that story up.